Hey guys, welcome to the first possible episode of Barely Engrish, where I'm going to talk about all the things that I don't like about Cowboy Bebop. If you like it, let me know in the comments, and if I should continue and do more of these, or if I should stick to scripted stuff. Honestly, I am a little more concise when I write a script, and I did tend to ramble, especially in the later half of this video. But thanks so much for watching, and enjoy.
I think it's time to blow this thing. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
I'm gay!
The things I don't like about Cowboy Bebop aren't objective things. They're subjective. They're things I don't like. And yeah, I don't think it's a fucking 11, but it doesn't meet my personal standard. There's tons of shit that I love that other people don't. And there's tons of shit I hate that other people love. So what is it that I don't like about Cowboy Bebop? I, for the life of me, cannot stand Faye Valentine. Jesus fucking Christ on a fucking motorbike. She is, in my opinion, one of the most insufferable characters I think ever. Now don't get me wrong, she has an appeal, but it's not to me. You get what I'm saying? She appeals to people who like femme fatales, who like badass chicks, but who also don't mind slobs who do nothing but a mooch and add nothing to the plot. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, I don't get why she's there. And don't get me wrong, she's helped out before, and her fucking ship is the coolest design in the entire show. But she's a fucking leech of a person with no real redeeming factors as far as I can see it. Now granted, Ed to an extent is kind of similar, but at least Ed's ability to hack, at least it serves a function. What does Faye do except for be sexy? Like, I can't stand that. I can't stand someone whose only existence is to be a sexy eye candy character. Oh, Faye is great. She has all this great character. Her backstory is amazing. Oh man, it's so sad and tragic. Fuck you. Like, seriously. Fuck you. Faye's backstory is boring and trite. She's a fucking amnesiac who doesn't remember anything about her past, and the only thing she can remember is fed to her by a fucking con man. Oh, that's fucking boring. I don't care. Oh, that's the reason why she steals stuff, though, you know? She owes a lot of money to that con man because he was a con man who conned her out all her con money con. Yeah, I don't care. Like, it's dumb. I really hope someone can come up with a really great argument against this, because I want to hear one. I absolutely cannot stand Faye. If Faye was removed from Cowboy Bebop, it would be a phenomenally better show. Now, I say that, but at the same time, my favorite episodes in Cowboy Bebop are Jupiter Jazz Parts 1 and 2. And Faye's pretty important to those episodes, I will admit. But she's definitely the weakest parts of those episodes, in my opinion. Granted, haven't watched it since 2012. But if Jupiter Jazz is good enough to me that I can remember it by name this far gone from watching it, I'd like to think it is as good as it is in my head, which is to say, the best part. And talking about Jupiter Jazz leads me perfectly into my next point. Narrative. For me, in general, narrative is the most important thing. It's the reason why I play so many RPGs. It's the reason why there are animes I love that everyone don't love, and there are animes I hate that everyone loves. Cowboy Bebop is the best example, because its narrative is lacking, in my opinion. I think the story of Cowboy Bebop is fantastic, and its narrative structure is really the thing I don't like. To me, the narrative structure of Cowboy Bebop, that is to say, that you have episode to episode vignettes that lead into one overarching narrative, it works really well in other things. Something like Avatar: The Last Airbender does pretty much the exact same type of thing. The big difference, though, is that a vast majority of the vignettes have nothing to do with the overarching narrative. Now, some people can probably make the case that the overarching narrative in Cowboy Bebop is escape. But while that may be the case, I don't like that. One of the first things in the very first episode that Cowboy Bebop does is set you up. An expectation is created by showing the flashback wherein it hints at Spike having this backstory, right? And that, to me, is the overarching narrative of Cowboy Bebop. Because even though all the other characters have their own backstory, have their own important moments in the show, it's Spike's backstory that is focused on. Like the last 2 episodes, Jupiter Jazz, and a few other episodes sprinkled in between, all focus around this story. The best moment in Cowboy Bebop in the last episode is about Spike. It's about him getting resolution in his story. It's whenever he dies. But that overarching narrative that I see that's there, it's not the focus of the show. And because it's not the focus of the show, the thing that I care about the most isn't brought up in a vast majority of episodes. Like, I could make a list of every single Cowboy Bebop episode that has something to do with Spike Spiegel's past. And I could put those episodes back to back to back, and it would work as an OVA. That's how not connected the story is. It's not cohesive. The narrative structure of the show isn't cohesive to the narrative that it's trying to tell. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's a bad show because it's not strictly cohesive. I don't like it because it's not strictly cohesive. I don't like the fact that the main part of the story that I like, I can't experience without watching everything else. I mean, yes, I can just watch the good bits. And some of the good bits are just the vignettes, because most of the vignettes are fantastic. But I don't want to do that. I want to just watch a show and have it be narratively cohesive. You know? I don't like the idea that parts of Cowboy Bebop can just be cut out if I don't want to watch it. I'm sure some people like that. We all have our different tastes. In fact, if Cowboy Bebop is your favorite anime, good for you, because Cowboy Bebop is a fantastic anime. It's just not for me. I want Spike's story. It's the thing that interests me the most. And yes, I know that because the theme is basically trying to escape from oneself, it doesn't behoove itself to explore those backstories. And it's totally fine that it's not really that cohesive, because each of these characters in the show are trying to escape. And if that's all the show was, just a series of vignettes that hinted at a past that they're running from, I think that would be fine. In fact, I think that would be fantastic. But that's not what it is. The story chooses, at times, to focus on Vicious and Spike, despite the fact that the show wants to claim to not strictly be about that confrontation between the two of them. Basically, what I'm getting at is that my main issue with Cowboy Bebop is that it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to be an episodic show focused around vignettes of these wacky noirish bounty hunters in space, but it also wants to be a deep, sad story about one man who loves a woman. The overall narrative as I see it, the one of Spike Spiegel and his backstory and his resolution to his backstory and of Vicious, isn't, at least in my opinion, very well woven into Cowboy Bebop. Now, despite this, I'm more than willing to admit, fantastic show. Love that show. It's one of those shows that I can just put on in the background and have fun. And the vignette style of the narrative is part of that reason. I don't have to pay attention, because not everything on the screen is important. But whenever I want to watch something and be gripped, I like knowing that there's a narrative there, a story. Most of my favorite anything that have really interesting narratives that hook you and they keep feeding you the narrative throughout until the eventual resolution and climax. That's what I look for whenever I'm looking for something I love. Cowboy Bebop doesn't have that. As I've said 100 times, that doesn't mean it's bad. To me, Cowboy Bebop is a personal 9. It's one of those shows that I recommend to most people. But just because I recommend it to most people doesn't mean it's for me. And that's not a negative for the show. That's just personal. To me, the most important thing in any kind of story is the narrative. You can have weak characters, you can have poor animation, you can have bad direction. But if your narrative is weak, I'm going to lose interest really quick. Anyway, if I should do more things like this, if you like it, tell me in the comments. If I should try and stick to scripted so that I'm a little more narrow focused, do that too. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm the dumbest piece of shit in the history of dumb pieces of shit. I will appreciate that. Or tell me that you've never really thought about it the same way I have. The point of this video is not to get you to dislike Cowboy Bebop. It's to explain why I dislike Cowboy Bebop. And maybe I did a shit job of that. If I did a shit job of that, tell me why. Maybe I'll do like a follow-up video to this. Maybe something more scripted. I'm Engrish Mike, and I hate anime.